Monday couldn't come any sooner. After taking the floor plans from Miss Santos the day before the last, I spent most of my Sunday drawing up plans and calling in my suppliers. Although no design choices have been made yet, I'm quite sure that they'd want high-end appliances, the most expensive materials, and the most pretentious everything. They usually did, these rich types, based from experience at least. Given how badly this whole thing started, it wouldn't hurt to be prepared. I have to check myself, make sure I'm not playing with my gloves as one of the other building tenants takes the elevator up with me. It makes me self-conscious when the woman's eyes go over me, and I'm sure she was going to point out some perceived flaw in my physical appearance. But I'm saved from being paranoid when they went off a few floors later. Still, the ride up to my floor is nerve-wracking. The Wrights lived at the very top, the penthouse, the creme de la creme when it comes to condominium and urban living. Just getting access to the place is an ordeal of its own. I had to jump so many hoops, so many security checks just to secure a key card. Not only because of building management, but because of the Wrights' personal security. It sometimes felt like I'm being interrogated for a crime and not visiting a client at their home. Even when their personal assistant called in to help out and verify my presence, the process is aggravated rather than hastened. Speaking of the devil, the elevator door opens and I am greeted by none other than Whiskey's not-so-little lackey.
I do apologize if I kept Mr. and Mrs. Wright waiting, but I'm here now and I'm ready, so if I may, where are they?
They've just woken up, but they should be down soon.
That's why you were delayed so much.
I'm surprised to see you made it through security, and only 5 minutes late.
You said I'd be through security soon, and it took half an hour. Define soon in this context.
I'd make myself comfortable if I were you. I'm going to go and put the kettle on.
About the tea, I don't want to intrude or anything.
The sir does not like being woken up by the whistling. But who am I to deny tea to a guest?
I can't believe you're using me as an excuse. He shows me to the couch before drifting off towards the kitchen, quietly pulling out a teapot, cups, and all sorts of other things in preparation for tea. I ignore the animosity towards his employer that his words implied. I wouldn't be too surprised if Whiskey's own people don't like him. Accepting the quiet and isolation instead, I brace myself for what's to come. In this case, soon apparently means more than 5 minutes, or even 10. I sit in their living room, just waiting. And when the kettle starts whistling and the tea has been served, I continue to wait. At least the silence is relaxing. But then, there's a crash. I nearly spill tea all over my lap in surprise, and I look up expecting security to come running. Even the man at the kitchen counter continues to fix breakfast like he heard nothing. I don't want to speak up about it because he looks far too absorbed in his cooking, and I don't want to be the cause of burnt food or worse. However, there's something in me that just wants to figure out what that was, although I am normally not this nosy. What should I do then? Okay, so this is a bit of an interesting one. Both of these choices lead to CGs, actually. And neither of them is a positive or a negative to anybody. So with that in mind, I'm going to flip a coin, and we are going to see which option we should take. So heads, we will check it out. Tails, we will continue waiting. Hiya! Okay. And it is heads, so we are going to check it out. The crash came from the hallway, and I really shouldn't be snooping about. But it's just concern. Yeah, concern that urges me to check it out. Sneaking a glance at the butler, I consider sneaking off, but...
Excuse me, but where's the loo?
He barely looks my way before pointing a spatula towards the hallway. It's a good excuse as any. And if I'm caught lingering longer than I should, I could just excuse myself and say that I wasn't sure which door led to where. Yeah. Creepy. Still, looking into the hallway reveals nothing. I don't see anything that might have caused the crash. The hallway, like the rest of the place, is in pristine condition. There are several doors for not only the toilet, but also, presumably, rooms for their butler and for other members of the staff. As I stand there, however, something feels definitely out of place. One of the doors, the nearest within my reach, stands ajar, and from inside a light flickers incessantly. It could simply be a light bulb that needs replacing, but the thought of it in a place so well taken care of seems odd, off. I think that maybe this is where the crash came from. Inside I can spy a radio lying on the floor. That's probably it, right? Maybe one of the help, in a hurry to get out of the room, knocked over it in the process. If that's all it is, I should really leave it alone. As I turn to leave, the sound of static fills the air, and a man's tinny voice interrupts the silence.
At 7 in the morning, students found a 5th-year dead.
Why am I still standing here?
Assumed to have fallen from her dormitory window.
This seems familiar, doesn't it?
Authorities are investigating the possibility of foul play.
Like I've heard it before.
Reporting from St. Samthins, Shane McLaughlin of Galway Bay, AM.
What the?
Terrifying. I actually almost got scared by that one. I knew that she was going to show up at the door, but I didn't think it was that soon. Phew. Marianne visited the Wrights' penthouse to discuss work with the couple. While waiting for them, Marianne decided to investigate a violent crash she heard. In the hallway, there was something odd. I recoil, backing away from whatever that was. In the process, I trip backwards on my feet, and I wait for the pain of falling flat on my back. But instead, I feel a hand on my back and see the smug smile of, well, guess who?
Oh, don't tell me you're reporting to work drunk, Mint.
You sound like you're still drunk. Of course, I know exactly who that voice belongs to. It just has to be him.
Marianne McCullough, hammered on the job? That would be something.
Well, it's starting. But, as if I had been burned, I push him away from me with a deep scowl on my face. Even his slightest touch makes me sick. And that smug smile on his face makes me want to come in contact with him. If only to break his nose with my fist.
Is that any way to say hello to a good friend?
We aren't friends. Let's get that straight first off, Mr. Wright. Secondly, you're a married man, so that thing that happened shouldn't have happened.
Oh, come on. Don't tell me it wasn't even a little fun. A bit of a romp never hurt anybody.
No, it wasn't fun, and we shouldn't have done it. But since we did, let's pretend it didn't happen and never speak of it again.
I was drunk and had no self-control. Don't I get a free pass?
No. I really can't believe this guy. Literal worst. Okay. Neither of these leads to a CG, so I guess I'll try to get some positive affection. Sir, I bid you good day. I want nothing more than to punch the fucker and show him what for, but I have to remind myself to stay calm. No matter what I feel for this man, no matter how much I want to cuss him out and spew every profanity in the book and then some, he is still my client. I don't imagine that knocking the block off one of the more influential persons of high society would go well with the rest of my usual clientele.
It doesn't matter. I have work to do. I'm here to do my job. And if Whiskey has any ounce of sense in him, he'll know not to bring up this matter.
He must have some sense, right?
Or else what? I can't take that statement seriously without one of those.
Apparently not. Use your imagination.
Whiskey will know not to bring the matter up, or else he'll get what's coming to him.
No, still not convinced. You tried, I suppose. Plus points for that.
Thanks. The dead air between us, because it can't be anything else but that, is broken as a lively voice calls out from the loft.
Marianne! I hope I haven't kept you waiting too long.
Hi, Hannah.
I know we agreed we'd start at 10 o'clock, but mornings just simply do not agree with me. Not one bit. It's been like this since I've been in university.
I can relate to this. It's 5 minutes to 11 o'clock. These high-end clients sure like to be fashionably late. I'm used to it, though. Much like how I'm used to so many years of hearing people mispronounce my name. Besides, Berating or correcting my client would be extremely impolite, and Marianne doesn't sound too bad when she says it. To be fair, it doesn't seem like she's late on purpose.
I see you're up, darling. You know, you could have woken me up as well. Were you showing Marianne around? Not that there's much to see. This place is so tiny compared to the mansion.
I'm more worried about the way she stares at me, judging. Such a look. It doesn't suit her pretty face at all. Just seeing Mrs. Wright reminds me too much of her. And maybe I'm starting to hear her again. See her again when I shouldn't. I should have left it all behind. Forgotten it. To think she would be looking at me that way. I can just feel my hands tremble.
Oh yes, just showing her around and getting to know each other. Isn't that right, Marianne?
Yes, of course. And your butler was making breakfast a while ago. So if you want to get right to that...
Breakfast would be lovely.
Awkward. It's fine. A very spooked Marianne accidentally bumped into Luke Wright. Furious over his blatant dishonesty during their first encounter, she warned him not to mention what happened that night. Luke simply ignored her, because that's what he does. There is no denying the clients when they invite me over to the table. Though it is too personal to share a meal in their home, it would be terribly rude to deny their invitation. Besides, the pancakes did look and smell heavenly. A bowl of clotted cream, fruits, syrups, jams, and other spreads are laid out next to them, making for a colorful arrangement. If this was a brunch with friends, I would have gladly helped myself to the whole lot. But as it is, I accepted just a few pieces of pancakes and topped it off with lemon and sugar.
You know, I was a tiny bit serious when I said I wanted a helipad.
You know?
And you're not serious about the greenhouse, the vineyard, and the stables.
Well, I do want those too, but I know you'll agree to those.
We're talking about interiors here, honey. You don't handle exterior designs and whatever handles those sorts of projects, do you, Marianne?
I'm able, actually, and willing to take a project of that nature. I was an architect in Ireland before. Of course, that's another contract entirely. I also suggest we finish the house itself before working on any additions to the rest of the property. There won't be any problems about ownership this time, will there? Pardon if I'm crossing a line, but the acquisition was rather quick.
Oh, don't you worry. We've got everything sorted this time around. I've talked to Miss Cooper and Mr. John from BRC, as well as the old owners. Everything has been paid in full, and all we're waiting for is the paperwork from the land registry. They're letting us move in as soon as we please. It's not like they were living there in the first place.
That's good to hear. The problems that could arise from renovating another person's home would be... well, let's not dwell on it.
Best not to.
First off, we'll want to know how you want the place to look. It's pretty furnished as is, but I understand if you want to modernize the whole thing.
Actually, I'd prefer to keep the place looking as it is. But at the same time, I want modern appliances. You worked on the Ludgate's Christchurch summer residence. I do remember there being an oven I thought was a simple drawer before. Make them look vintage, antique, blended with the rest of the decor.
Customize appliances then. I can't find someone for that, and if you can't tell me what you specifically want, it'll hasten up the process. We're talking about electronic appliance manufacturers. If you have a preferred brand to work with.
Splendid! So, what is next on our agenda? All the other interior designers we've hired in the past did not have us this involved.
I stop. What sort of half-baked designer did that? If I knew who they were, I would have words. This isn't the time or place for it, however. Instead, I use this brief pause to pull out the floor plans I brought with me.
We'll have to figure out what you want to do with the rooms. Here, we can have a quick run through.
What is that little room next to the master's bedroom?
Oh, as far as I could tell when I saw it, it's a second bedroom of sorts. Used, apparently, for the ladies-in-waiting who has served Lady Charlotte Ermengarde. Which is strange, as that isn't the norm for these sorts of houses.
Well, we're not stuffing Johans in there. He won't fit. You don't suppose we could turn it into a walk-in closet and a dressing room?
I love fashion, but do we really need to turn an entire room into a walk-in closet, dear? We'll have large closets and a wardrobe in the bedroom already.
Says the one who takes 3/5 of our closet. Well, what do you suggest we do with it?
I thought a utility room of some sort would be nice. A craft room where I can do fun things. Or maybe a children's room might be nice. You know, for when Kylie comes over. Or if Rochelle visits once she's had a baby.
1, you are not inviting that witch. And 2, there's a whole mansion for Kylie to play in. We don't need a children's room, and you don't even do arts and crafts.
Called out.
I'd like to turn the guest's room and the study into my personal office, by the way, if you don't mind.
You can turn it into a personal office if I can have my utility room. It's just the one room of the many. I'm taking that room for myself, no matter what you say, dearie. So you might as well take this deal. You're always out doing business anyway. The real problem is the theater. Whatever are we going to do with all that space?
Fine, we could turn it into our own personal cinema, I suppose. Might as well have it, if you plan on not having a telly in the parlor.
Yes, well, I don't want guests to be glued to the telly when they come over for a meal and some tea. By the looks of things, we can keep the rooms as what they are on the ground floor, though. The ballroom would be perfect for parties.
Do we really need a dining hall, though? I don't suppose we can't convert it into a garage.
A garage.
What for? You can park your cars outside.
What about that room, right there, in the northwest corner?
That's sleeping quarters for the household help?
Oh, that is perfect! Johans will be glad if we have other staff members who stayed in. It'd be convenient so they don't have to make the trip from Luxbourne to the mansion when they're needed.
You'll definitely need a lot more people to maintain a property of this size.
The mansion is really a lot bigger than I thought. Look at all these rooms. I didn't even know there was a music room next to the parlor because of what happened.
There was a grand piano in there too, when we checked during the tour.
Did you hear that, Luke? Maybe you can take up playing the piano again.
Aw.
Oh, you should have seen him when we were younger, Marianne.
It's not like I was very good with the thing.
Oh, hush you. You were no Mozart, but I loved hearing you play nonetheless. He'd come over to my home and he'd play such fun tunes. He'd sing too and I'd dance and it was just...
Mr. Wright playing the piano? I can't imagine it. But the earnest way in which Mrs. Wright said so told otherwise.
Anyway, what do you think of these plans, Marianne?
Are we not even going to consider one of my requests? Not even just a closet or just a garage?
The garage?
Now, that isn't fair, is it? You're not the only one who's going to be living here.
I hardly see how that's unfair. I told you you're getting your office and your theater, the greenhouse, the vineyard, and the stables. That sounds fair, does it not, Marianne?
Well, you know, in situations like these, where it's positive for one of the characters, no matter which choice, and neither choice leads to a CG, you gotta consult the coin. So, heads, we side with Hana. Tails, we side with Luke. Okay, coin, what do you say? Hoya! Heads! I approve. Let us side with Hana. Boop! Eh. Mrs. Wright has her points, though I really didn't want to butt into the spat of a husband and wife. But with the way the two were looking at me to settle this, I might as well just keep to the facts instead of giving opinion.
Mr. Wright, your plan isn't quite feasible from an architectural perspective. I'm not even sure how much we can do without closer inspection. Well, the one about the garage, at least. A walk-in closet is easy enough, but the garage?
See, a garage isn't architecturally feasible and it isn't going to be financially sound as well.
Oof.
We're already going to spend a lot on your other requests. You have several acres of land to park on already.
What? Did you calculate that on the fly? Financially sound my foot. You're probably just thinking up of imaginary numbers.
I can walk you through it. Equation by equation, if you like.
Might I remind you that I was a financial manager? I also looked over and approved the expenses of our other houses. I know the rough costs of these things by now, love. Masters in business administration, major in accounting. Sometimes I think you forget that I'm not as dumb as I act.
Oof. That catches my attention more than anything. It sounds more unbelievable than Whiskey playing the piano. She really didn't seem like the type.
Business administration and accounting? What university?
Luxbourne U, of course. Go Lux Dragons. Red and gold.
Excuse me? How about we move on this chit-chat ahead and do whatever else needs to be done sometime today? I had to cancel my appointments for this, you know. We might as well do a proper inspection with the designer this time, just to get it out of the way.
Yes, no time like the present. You want a thorough inspection? Might as well do it now. We actually took another look at the property yesterday, though it was brief. But I'm sure you would want to see it yourself, to spot anything we might have missed.
It's not like I have much of a choice, do I? Not really. Let's see. The mansion's arrangements were discussed over breakfast. During the meeting, the Wright couple had an argument about the mansion's arrangements. In the end, they decided a visit will settle it. Riding to the Ermengarde mansion in their rice is an awkward affair. Not only am I worried about scuffing the expensive leather seats, but I'm also worried about getting in the middle of another couple's spat. With the tension thick in the air, I can feel them starting at each other any time. Nobody is saying anything. Up until Mr. Wright tells his valet to turn the damn radio off. And for a moment, I think that he might start. But instead, he just stays quiet, and so do the rest of us. In the end, the sufferable silence stays. Well, it wasn't insufferable, at least. I have never been so glad to see a house. Stepping out of the car and up to the mansion meant the end of an uncomfortable ride, and I can finally take a deep breath of fresh air. The beauty of the place never fails to make me gaze in wonder every time I see it as well. Mrs. Wright moves toward the front door, keys in hand, and I can already hear Mr. Wright plotting.
All right, Johans, we're going to go in, but I want you to look around the place. Familiarize yourself with it. Know every nook and cranny, every inch of the lot. Go and see where we can put that vineyard and the other things we talked about. We'll want to know where to station security as well, so go around the perimeter and figure it out.
Scout the property and circle the perimeter on foot. You do know this is 46 acres of land, sir.
Well, you are not driving a car over the grass. Put those long, spidery legs of yours to good use. I didn't hire you to stand around and look intimidating.
Good grief.
Go, mush.
Someday, I'd like to ask how Johans can even stand and tolerate the man. Why doesn't he just quit? Certainly, the pay can't be that good. Even I'm a bit put off by our mutual employer, and the only thing that keeps me from bailing is the fact that we've already signed a contract. At least I'll only be working with him during the duration of the project. He works with them every day.
Sometimes I think you hired me to make me suffer for your amusement.
Someday, I'd ask. I feel a bit bad for him. If it's any consolation, he'll be away from Mr. Wright, if only for a little while. We're able to enter the mansion after a bit of standing out there in the sun. This wretched, strange sunlight that is far too alien and rare. There had been a bit of a problem with the missus not knowing which key was which. The first item on the agenda would be the grand staircase. It seemed sturdy during the open house, but a closer inspection might say otherwise. There are no obvious marks of damage, nor wear and tear, probably rethreaded during renovations. Peeking under the grand carpet, the wood is properly installed with the bark placed down to prevent cupping. The carpet itself could use a vacuum, though. Structural conditions, from what I can see without actually dismantling the thing, look to be in good shape, and the handrails and support posts are firm. The work on it should be commended. I can't look much more into the rest of the foyer, however, because Mr. Wright starts to hurry us into checking the dining hall.
So, what do you think? Certainly we can't turn this area into a garage.
It's Jacobean architecture. I'd say these would be pilasters and not buttresses, but you never really know. They really liked mixing up these elements. You could say it was pretty avant-garde at the time. We might hit a support beam if we're not careful.
And in layman's terms?
From what I see here, we could risk great damage to the house if we try to turn the dining hall into a garage.
There you go. The man didn't look too pleased at this. There's a look of disappointment before he sighs and looks around the place with an air of defeat. When he moves to speak, I dread another unreasonable demand. Again.
This will stay a dining hall then. But if I may have another request instead.
And there it is.
At least spruce the place up with some flowers, some plants or something. It feels so old and dead in here.
That's hardly unreasonable. Daffodils are a must, I presume.
The look that passes between the two of them. There is a genuine look of fondness there. This is the first time I've seen such an exchange between the two of them. If anyone are to see them like this, there is little doubt that they loved each other.
Of course. And I want a garden full of them.
Now, if you excuse me, I'd like to look at the rest of the house. I'll just be around here downstairs, if anybody needs me.
That leaves Mrs. Wright and I.
He's quite fond of them, you know.
I know.
I can imagine. He looked terribly upset when we told him he can't have his garage.
I meant the daffodils. We always have a vase full of them in every house we own. Somewhere, I'd like to think. They may be about his mother. He never talks about her. I don't even know her name. He likes to flatter, claim that they remind him of me, but he's always loved the flowers, even before we married.
Much like the piano, I didn't take him for a person who liked flowers. Daffodils least of all. What's next? Am I going to find out that Mr. Wright saves kittens from burning buildings?
I'll go and snoop about upstairs. You go and do whatever it is that you have to do.
She sounds so sad. When she goes, without even asking if I need her here, I'm left standing to stare at the walls. Really, I don't need to do a thorough inspection of the building itself. It isn't really part of an interior designer's job. But the architect in me is committed to doing this task with every project. If I'm going to make a living space that has both form and function, I might as well make sure that the entirety of it is safe for my clients. Since I'm already here, I roam around the dining hall to check things off my punch list, if you will. But when it's time to move on, I hesitate. Mr. Wright said he would be somewhere around here on the ground floor, and I really didn't want to be alone with whiskey. I have to look through the place eventually, sure. But on the other hand, I can do it later, when he's gone. I can go upstairs first if I want to. Which floor should I go first? Okay, so in this instance, there is no CGs on the ground floor. So, let's go to the first floor. Because there is at least a couple of CGs up there. I've already seen enough of this floor during the open house. Of course, I know that it's just a convenient excuse. I just don't want to be in the same room as whiskey anytime soon. So, I might as well just go upstairs first. I'm okay with this. The banisters on the grand staircase's landing are solid and at a proper height. Any lower and they would be trouble. There's a small catch on the carpet, though. But as long as nobody tries to run down the stairs until it gets fixed, things should be alright. Yeah, I mean, who would run down the stairs to get away from a ghost or something, right? And the stained glass, art. Restored, no doubt, in the image of the last Lady and Lord of Ermengarde. Or it was supposed to be, until Lady Charlotte's fiancé was brutally murdered. Yee. By a witch. A witch, of all things, from what I've read. You'd think the historians of this place will be a lot more scrutinizing, filtering out stuff like that. Yeah, it was a bit of a framing, if you will. I'm amazed they bothered with it, instead of replacing it with some generic cookie-cutter design. This entire piece alone would have cost roughly 500, even £1 million. Lady Charlotte Ermengarde and her beloved. Looking at the mosaic, it's not too far a stretch of the imagination to believe that the depicted images could be Mr. and Mrs. Wright. It can be easily assumed as such if one doesn't know the history of the mansion. Really, a place like this should be protected by the government as a landmark. But what can I do about it? Walking into the East Wing, I try to go into the theater, but is met with an obstacle. The obstacle that is locked doors. 2 doors. 2! And both of them are locked. I'd be frustrated. Would be if I already hadn't snuck off while the Wrights were having their little business meeting with Miss Cooper before to take a peek. With what Mr. Wright wanted, we'd have to install a powerful projector, the type they use in cinemas, and a projection screen. The seats would have to be reupholstered, if they're to be any comfortable, and the walls will have to be covered in dark material. Paint, wallpaper, or install wall-to-wall carpeting. Really, of all the rooms I could be jealous of, it's this one. I could just picture myself in there, watching old kung fu flicks on a weekend-long marathon. Makes me wonder what kind of movies Mrs. Wright would like. Rom-coms, perhaps? Her husband, on the other hand, I'd rather not think about it. In the middle of my notation and planning, I don't even realize that I'm not alone until I'm caught standing in front of a locked door like a fool.
Were you meaning to go in there? I'm afraid we won't be able to open it up today.
Oh well, I wanted to, but it's fine. I can still survey the rest of the place.
Apologies, but a key was missing when they were handed over. They told us that they'd get right back to us with it.
What? But aren't they supposed to hand over all the keys once property changes hands? That can be grounds to file a complaint.
They were already kind enough to let us move in so early. There's no need to raise a fuss about it. Worst comes to worst, we can call for a locksmith.
The air is heavy and somber when she grows quiet and glances out the window. Out towards the vast expanse that surrounded what would be their house. Their home. Then she looks back at me with a sigh and a bitter smile.
Flowers. Yellow flowers. Daffodils, dandelions, and sunflowers and the sort all up front. Just a whole garden of them. They'll make the house look lovely, won't they?
Of course. A garden is a wonderful addition to any home.
As I say this, her eyes roam over me, scrutinizing and thoughtful. I have to hold back the shiver that threatens to run down my spine at being inspected so closely.
Yes, it must be nice.
We're still talking about the gardens, yes?
Yes?
I mean, not having to worry about what another person thinks of you.
What do you mean by that?
She lifts her hand and points to her wedding ring before it falls listlessly to her side.
Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I didn't marry Luke. There'll be no fights about walk-in closets or silly helipads. I could do with this place as my heart desires until there's nothing but content. Then again, I wouldn't have bought this place if it wasn't a gift for him. I probably wouldn't even be in Luxbourne if it wasn't for him. Maybe I would have moved to London, Manchester, or Birmingham. I might have even left the country altogether. France, Germany, Spain, Canada, Sweden, even America. The possibilities would have been endless.
I forgot about that line. I think it's still so funny that she's like, even America, like, the craziest option out of all of these. I might have even moved to America. Canada? Yeah, that's like par for the course. But America, I might have done something wild and moved to America. I don't know what to say to that. What is there to say?
I'm sorry, I must sound so petty and ungrateful. I do love him. So very much, even if he can be a bit difficult at times.
Oh no, not at all. I'm just confused why you're telling me this, of all people.
Just a whim, I think. Just flights of fancy, that's all. Don't you ever think about one decision you've made in your life and wonder how much would change if you chose to do things differently?
I try not to dwell on the past, ma'am.
Same. The key word is try, of course. Thinking of the past brings up too many ghosts. Memories of her. And I do wonder, what would change if I just said yes when she asked for me? Maybe she'd still be with me. I return to the present. Just like I said, I try not to dwell on the past. Okay. So neither of these lead to a CEG, so I'll just pick the one that's the most positive.
You must have been quite the pair, Mrs. Wright.
There we go.
Hannah Evans and Luke Wright taking Luxbourne by storm. At least, that's what I've heard.
That gets a giggle out of her. And can I be blamed if I liked the way her eyes crinkled, or how she sounded when she laughed?
Quite the celebrity couple, according to all the newspapers. But it wasn't always that way. Father certainly didn't approve of him at first. Why, he told me to stay away from him. Told me that I was too good for him. That's the usual overprotective dad speak, though. But of course you know that.
You were too good for him, though. I don't. I was too busy keeping my grades up at boarding school to maintain my scholarship. Never mind the fact that I went to an all-girls boarding school, so Father never had any reason to fuss over boys trying to date his little girl.
And what did you tell him? Considering you are Mrs. Wright now, you or the mister must have convinced him otherwise.
Yes, well, I told him I was my own woman and I could decide who was deserving of me or not on my own. Thank you very much. That never stopped him from making sure Luke couldn't get anywhere near me without an escort and a guard anyway. Though he certainly wasn't that overprotective when I was dating Jack.
Maybe your father considered this Jack a more capable man?
I doubt it. Jacqueline was nowhere close to being any sort of a role model when we were in college. She was rebellious, reckless, and immature. Everything I wasn't. But she was quite the charming, stunning woman, and I think that made her quite likable.
That takes me by surprise a lot more than by the fact that Mr. Wright's father-in-law didn't like him. That much was to be expected. But this... I have nothing against them because that's their thing, though the nuns and the priest would say otherwise. Although, wasn't she worried about the implications? The rumors that would have arisen about her dating another of the same sex? Especially with someone of her social status.
You look surprised, Marianne. The first thing anybody needs to know about me is that I go after what I want. And when it comes to who I love, it doesn't matter to me whether they're a man or a woman.
It's a nice enough sentiment. Still, the thought that this lovely lady before me had once been with another woman? I can feel my cheeks heat up a bit and I panic, thinking they might be red enough for Mrs. Wright to notice. I can't tell, though a coy smile graces her lips.
Legs, we called her, because of how often she was running about because of one thing or another. Climbing up walls and, what do they call it now? Parkour. And also because of her, well, legs.
And you went after her?
Not right away. When I first met her, I wanted nothing to do with her. She was so improper and uncouth. But I slowly realized that didn't mean she was a bad person. On the contrary, she did many a good thing and was always so nice to others. I found myself confused. I couldn't figure out if I wanted to be her or wanted to be with her. So I approached her, told her that I might have fancied her.
And your father didn't mind?
He must have thought it was my form of rebellion. But he never watched out for Jack as much as he watched out for Luke. If I didn't love my father so much, if he hadn't raised me right, I think I might have told him to bugger off. He's never been more attentive of me than when I started bringing home dates.
I'm sure he loved you very much.
She laughs once more, a glow about her. I know, she says with a small smile.
I suppose I've taken too much of your time with my silly stories. You still have much to inspect?
I still have most of this floor, and I'll want a quick run-through of the ground floor again later.
I shan't keep you from your work any longer then. Just call me if you need anything. I'd like to look around myself.
When she turns to leave, she glances back at me before disappearing into the foyer. And then the music changed. I look out the window from where she was standing, and I move on, alone with nothing but my thoughts and her.
Finally, some peace and quiet. Thought the old biddy would never leave.
It's utter madness, this hearing things. I reckon it's the stress, though I don't know what exactly I'm stressed about. If meeting Mrs. Wright has really thrown me for a loop, I'd be worried. If I'm developing some sort of psychosis or disorder, well, I'd call a doctor. But hopefully it isn't that. Not right here, and not right now. I mean, it could just be that personal talking cricket. The conscience, so to speak, and I'm only noticing now. Though if it isn't very helpful. Pushing the dilemma of voices in my head aside, I go back to work. But I can barely make it a few steps before everything tilts and shifts. I don't really stumble, but it feels like I'm being thrown off my feet, and the rest of the world just follows. Though my feet stay firmly on the ground, and even if I stay mostly upright, I feel like I've been heaved and put off balance. I have to close my eyes in the hopes of willing the sudden sense of vertigo away, but when I open them... well, I don't feel any less sick because of the sight that greets me. Blood dripped from the walls and the ceiling, pooling downwards and seeping into the curtains and the carpet. A wave of nausea, stronger than the last, hits me along with the overpowering stench of blood and gore. I want to bolt. The rational part of my head is telling me to flee. And I would have gladly done as it asked if only I didn't hear her.
In here, Marianne. Come on. I have something to show you.
I could have ignored it, would have ignored it, if I only heard it in my head. But I swear that this time it's coming from one of the rooms. Much further into the study. And I feel compelled to pay attention. I can't just turn around and leave. Not when it's her. I don't even think as I follow the sound of her voice. Lorraine. Lovely Amanda Lorraine Lasserfiona. She was my friend, the only one that I had at St. Sampson's. I was a scholar, the charity case, in a school for privileged and prestigious young girls. They all looked down at me, if they cared to look at me or acknowledge my presence at all. All except her.
Oh, stop your crying. You know better than to listen to Maeve. Why, I ought to teach that butterface a lesson.
Wait, no, lass! I don't want you getting into trouble with the sisters again!
Relax. It's not like I'm going to stomp her and her lackey's arses flat like last time.
Come on, let's just go back to our dorm room. I don't want to be on my Tobler while you go get yourself punished.
You'll be fine. Gip's there with you.
Lorraine was there when I needed her, through my highs and lows. Having her as a friend made being in a strange school, away from my father, all the more tolerable. She saw this poor, helpless girl who was kept down and shunned by everyone else, and, being the kind soul that she was, she rescued me. So brave, so beautiful. She was something else.
I'll eat all the chocolates stashed away in your closet if you go.
I can get more. Just don't go complaining to me if you get a tummy ache because of that.
Well, you don't want to get detention on a weekend, do you? It's a Friday. We can go to town and have some karaoke. And we can have a go at druids and demons again. You're not going to miss that just because of Maeve, are you?
Sometimes I question what I did to deserve a friend like her. In the darkest corners of my mind, where traitorous thoughts lurked, I thought that she only felt sorry for me. Maybe she was just being a good Samaritan, offering a helping hand. And perhaps I had been too selfish to return the favor.
You have a point. I'll just kick her arse on Monday then.
That's not what I mean!
I know what you mean, Em.
Wait, where are you going? You just told me you wouldn't cause trouble.
I still have something to do. Don't worry, it's not like I'm going to burn down her dorm room or something criminal like that. I'm just going to talk to her. Maybe I'll make it so that her room smells like a dog's air biscuit. That'll make it an excellent weekend. I'll see you in a bit, Marianne. Lots of tobblers.
Because when she told me that she loved me, I couldn't admit that I felt the same way. Not to her, and not even to myself. It was wrong. I was taught that way. Husband and wife, one man and woman. Unclean, impure. I prayed for her and I, for our sins and for salvation. I wanted to apologize for disregarding her feelings so callously. It must have been like a slap to the face for her. But life had gotten in the way. Exams, which were trivial in hindsight now, took top priority. I had to keep my grades up to keep my scholarship. For my father. I told myself I would apologize to her when those were over, that I needed to focus first and not let anything distract me. It had been easy when she avoided me like the plague. She was upset. I get that. I thought I had the time to make things right, but...
At 7 in the morning, students found a 5th year dead. Assumed to have fallen from her dormitory window.
They told us that it was an accident. That was the official statement. But I knew better. She was dead because of me.
Maeve had a hook and I kicked the bucket, didn't she? Ding dong, the witch is dead!
She had, though she didn't say which, Lorraine.
But at least Maeve had the courage to admit how she felt about me.
Interesting about the witch, because we did think about how Lord Edward was murdered, supposedly, by a witch. And then Lorraine brings up a witch. Interesting. I don't even know how long I've been stuck here in a trance. In the mirror, Lorraine smiles at me. She's as beautiful as I remember her. But then, I feel bile rise up in my throat as her clean image warps into how she looked like when they had found her dead, lying on the cold, hard ground. Good Saint Dimpna, great wonder worker in every affliction of mind and body, help me. I'm seeing things, hearing things. Am I going completely insane? Looking everywhere but at her, I hope and pray that it's enough to will whatever this is to go away. It doesn't even immediately register in my head that I can just leave.
You, on the other hand, can't even look me in the eye.
This isn't real. You're not. You're dead!
I'm dead. Because of you. And you won't even look at me. Look at me.
My breathing quickens, and I can feel my heart being torn apart by her words.
I'm so sorry, Lorraine.
Look at me!
I can't take it because she's right. It was my fault. The least I can do is look at what I've done. Lorraine, broken and bleeding, looks at me with such hate-filled eyes. An unnatural smile stretches across her face, and I can only see malice in it. Then she lunges as the mirror ripples around her form, the glass parting like the water's surface for her. She grips my shoulders, and I can feel her nails dig deep, sharp, even through the fabric of my clothes.
There you are.
Apologies spill through my lips as tears cloud my vision. But I won't give in to this madness. With every bit of strength I have left, I struggle to get away from her. Fear grips and threatens to choke me. I endure. I escape. And without turning back, I stumble back out. In my panic, I don't even care to look where I'm going. With one hand on the wall to steady me, I just hobble as fast as I can away from the study. Away from that mirror. Freedom is bittersweet. I'm free from the madness, it seems, as running out into the hallway reveals it to be in pristine condition. But it means I've turned my back on Lorraine. Again. I have no plans of stopping, not until I know I'm safe. And if that means walking back to Luxburn, as ridiculous as the idea is, then so be it. Someone suddenly grabs hold of me, however. Fingers digging deep into my shoulder, and my heart nearly stops. My body seizes, and I nearly scream.
Marianne, you look awful. I mean, not awful, but did something happen? Are you all right?
This is right.
Aww. Without thinking, I sought comfort, seeing that it wasn't her. It's a sudden, impulsive thing to do, and had I been in a better condition, I wouldn't even dare of doing such a thing. But I didn't know what else to do. Though I know I shouldn't, her warmth, her scent, they grounded me. She is intoxicating.
Marianne, what's going on? Oh, you're shaking like a leaf.
I like that Hannah's just like, oh, the poor dear. She's not like, get off me, peasant. Tremors run through my body as soon as my mind realized I am no longer in danger. I wanted to cry, scream about what I have seen, but like a scared child, I couldn't control myself. My mind couldn't reconcile with what I had seen. I should just write it off as a figment of my imagination, yet I can still feel her nails cutting into my skin.
Are you sick? Should I call for a doctor?
I'm sorry, Mrs. Wright.
By the way, did we ever hear this piece of music anywhere else in the game, or is it only during this scene?
Just feeling a little woozy and lightheaded is all.
Let's get you somewhere to sit down then. Come on, don't worry, I have you.
Aww. A lie. But a whole lot less complicated than telling her I was attacked by a dead girl. When the feeling of fear eases off, I feel nothing but shame for my actions. I quickly back away as I clear my throat and nod my thanks.
I think I've had enough looking around. If it's all right with you and Mr. Wright, I'll meet you outside.
If you're sure, I'll have the car started. Do you need assistance heading downstairs?
I'm all right, ma'am. Just go on ahead and I'll be right there.
It seems to placate her worries, though only for a brief second. Before she heads down, I don't miss the concerned glance she shoots my way, hidden quickly under another smile. I won't begrudge her for it. That worry. The look on my face must have been a strange enough sight on its own. Even I am still reeling from whatever that was. Her voice still whispers in my ears. After all these years, she's still... No, Marianne. Shaking my head of the thoughts, I drag in a breath and follow shortly after Mrs. Wright. Whatever has happened in the past, it's long gone. Only memories now. And those are things I can no longer bring back. It's already dark as we make our way out of the mansion. With no lights, we are only illuminated by the headlamps of the Wright's car and the stars up above us. The sight of them helps me compose myself much more than several minutes of being alone did. The car's engine is running, yet the two still stand out on the lawn. Mrs. Wright is busy, eyes up to the stars. And Mr. Wright, arms crossed, has his eyes down on the ground. It is the crunch of the grass under my heels that brings their attention to me.
About time. What took you so long? A minute longer and I'd think the house swallowed you all up.
Oh, hush, dear. I'm sure she has her reasons. Marianne doesn't seem the sort to idle.
Sorry, I was just checking on something important.
See, business is business and they take time, love. You should know that better than anyone. So, Marianne, what do you think? Are you the woman for the job? I know we already signed papers hiring you, but I want to be 100% sure that you are committed.
I glanced back towards the mansion. Knowing what I had seen there, or rather, who I thought I saw there, because there is just no way. Not to mention how I acted towards Mrs. Wright, for goodness sake. I should feel the slightest bit hesitant. I was lucky. I've seen enough films to know what happens when a promiscuous woman enters a haunted house. It doesn't end well. This is my chance to turn it down. Make excuses, say that I'm not up to the task, that I need to take care of my old sick father. Just pay the fine, which is probably outrageous for a contract like this, and let it go. I should turn it down. But for some obstinate reason, I can't. In the same manner I haven't let go of her, of the regret that has shadowed me since that day. Much as I hate to admit it, even to myself, seeing her again, the mischievous glint in her eyes, the loose tendrils of her hair curled around her forehead. It's something I've terribly missed. And now that it's here, almost within arm's reach, My father would tell me, sometimes you just simply have to go through with it, consequences be damned. And, well, I really don't have any logical reason to say no. At least not something a client like the Wrights would want to hear from a professional designer.
It's certainly an interesting project. You can be sure I'm seeing it through the end.
Such dedication! Oh, I do love the determination.
You were always determined like that, weren't you?
Hearing her voice once again sends a chill running down my back. I can't wait for this day to be over. Take me home. Country roads. Marianne examined the first floor upon arrival at the mansion. After a small talk with Hannah Wright, Marianne headed for the study. There, she saw a ghost from her past reflected in the mirror. Despite that, she gave her word that she would see through the project until the end. From the mansion and through Anselm, I rode with them in silence. But as soon as we hit city proper, I asked to be dropped off and bid them good night. I thought it'd be best if I didn't stay too long in confined spaces with either Mrs. or Mr. Wright. Both seemed to cause me serious trouble, and if the project had been any less interesting or grand, I would have dropped it without a second thought. Would have, shouldn't have, won't. I assure them that my place isn't that far off, and I have to fight off the urge to roll my eyes and groan when whiskey throws me a little smirk. Blech. But even in my own home, peace is elusive, as is sleep. I lie awake thinking of what I saw in that mansion, of who I saw. If I so much as hear a single whisper from her, if I so much as see a wisp of her hair, I'm afraid I'll go mad. But none of that happens, and it makes me feel hollow. For 2 nights I've had trouble sleeping. But it's only one morning, when fatigue has already let me rest, that I'm reminded of what terrifies me so.